This is Robert Monroe with another report on tape from our Explorer files. Our explorer this time is M.A.J., a psychologist with a background of some 25 years of personal counseling, among other things. She has learned quite well the process of oral communication while in the out-of-body state and is very lucid in her reporting. Also, this is a good demonstration of the role of the monitor in much of our research effort. Here is M.A.J. reporting on a meeting as it is taking place.
Ask him who he is.
Osmer. John Osmer. Some kind of a power plant.
Director of a power plant.
Plant.
Electrical power plant. Was this on the planet Earth?
Yes. In Oregon.
Ask him if he can remember the dates.
$1898, he was born. '46, he died.
Ask him where he was when he died.
Salem, Oregon.
What was his full name? Osmer? What was his first name?
John.
John Osmer. Ask him at what time of year he died in Salem, Oregon.
November.
Very good. Ask him what it felt like to die in November. In November 1946. Ask him what it felt like.
He died of a heart attack, and it was unexpected. And he felt fearful. He felt like he wasn't ready to go. He was holding on. And then when he began to pass over to the other side, people came to meet him, to help him.
Who are these people?
Sally.
And who was Sally to him?
His friend. As a child, they were friends.
Very good. Ask him what happened after the people met him, after Sally met him. Then what happened?
Well, there were two people that took him by. She took one hand, and man, I don't know whether it's his father or his grandfather, took him by the other hand, and he just walked around with him. He doesn't really remember all of the steps he went through. was just a gradual adapting to this new situation in which he began using those skills he had developed on the Earth planet.
To what is the purpose of his doing this that he is doing now?
He seems to be in a position of passing on information about use of atoms and atomic power. He passes it on sometimes to people through dreams. He's been attempting to directly channel some of this information. And I just am being told I'm not going to be given the specifics in this information, but that some people who have been doing research in a nuclear way have become very adamant against the use of nuclear power for weapons, and have objected, have somehow, although they haven't actually joined in an external organization, there has been a concerted effort to oppose the use of nuclear power in a detrimental way, and John has been attempting to communicate with this kind of circle of people who are on the Earth plane.
Then ask him from his perspective that he has now, from his viewpoint that he has now, is there a way that we can generate electricity very simply without use of nuclear energy?
There's a level of power beneath the Earth's crust. This can be activated by the rays of the sun. He's showing me some sort of an instrument. It seems to be shaped like an ice cream cone, larger, of course. And it goes down 200 feet into the Earth. And when the sun strikes inside of this cone-shaped instrument, this is very puzzling to me because personally I don't know anything about anything like this. So I'm just describing. I'm seeing a kind of a lining inside of this cone-shaped object. The cone-shaped object is in some kind of heavy metal, and this lining is a lighter weight metal, and it spins. It's activated by the sun, and it reflects and it spins. And there are On the side of this heavy metal cone, there are all sorts of little welded hooks. They're loops, holes that are like loops, not hooks, loops. And they have some cables extending out.
Is the point of the cone into the ground or the open end of the cone?
The point is into the ground, and the open end is out, and it has a reflector on the inside that is spinning around.
What is the angle of the cone off of the center line of the cone? What is the angle? How many degrees?
Maybe about 35 degrees.
Ask him if the angle is important.
He said yes.
What would be the best angle to use then?
28 degrees.
Very good. Then what is the outer shell material you've used in the cone?
Iron.
Very good. And what would be the material on the inner lining?
It's a different kind of material than let me see if I can understand it. It's an alloy. It says aluminum and tin.
In what ratio?
(70-30). The 30 is the tin.
Very good. Fine. What is the principle behind such a unit?
If I knew something about this, it might be easier. I just feel so absolutely blank, but I'll listen.
All you need to do is report.
Based on the relative temperatures between the earth crust where this has gone into 200 feet or more into the earth and the temperature of the sun, it's something like an alternating he says it's like an alternating current that takes place.
Very good. All right, well then, why don't you ask him if he had any children when he was on the planet Earth?
He said he had a son. His name was Mark.
Ask him if he knows where Mark is now.
Mark was drowned in some kind of an accident in some rapids.
Was this before November of 1946?
I get that it was 1948.
Ask him if his wife is still here on the planet Earth.
He says she's remarried to someone named Stewart. I think Stewart is the first name, but I'm not sure. And he's not very, I don't know, he just doesn't seem to want to talk about it.
Oh, I just say then, what was her first name?
Sue.
Very good. Then thank him for being so patient with us.
Thank you, John.
And then ask him how he feels about religion now that he is where he is now. How he feels about religion as it is, he knew it on earth here.
Well, he said he was never religious. He used to think of himself as being an atheist.
Ask him if he's changed his viewpoint at all since moving to where he is now.
He kind of laughs. That, it's like he gives you the impression of, everyone here knows that there's a divine plan, and there's a... He says we don't talk about religion especially, but the spirit is what we're working on and with, and
Ask him if he understands better the energy by which you're communicating with him right now.
well, he says he certainly understands it better, because when he was on the earth plane, he was not open to such communication. But he says he has much to learn in this area. He was really attached to his work. He made his work almost to God. And so he built up his next realm. He has to work that out, and then move on to another place where he can develop more artistic sides of himself, in another place where he can develop his spirituality higher. But that what he's saying is that our attachments, our preoccupations with certain aspects of existence predetermine where we go, what planet we work on, what our main activities are. Once we get past a certain level of well, I guess he refers to it as a level of confusion. A level in which many spirits, many entities are kind of trapped, are able to communicate with both sides somewhat, but not with any expertise, or they can't really be helpful to anyone. I guess he says it's what we talk about as the astral plane, where no real work is done. It's just kind of an interim. But when one is in that interim place, it feels, well, he says it feels partly confused, but sometimes like not too far from the way one felt on the earth plane.
Very good. Does he expect to return physically to the planet Earth?
He says he really doesn't have that knowledge. He doesn't have any expectations. He's in a place where he just has something to do right now, and he says he's not one of the planners, whatever that might mean.
Does he know who the planners are?
He said all he knows is that there are, like, hierarchies of spirits.
Has he met some of the hierarchy?
He says he's met messengers in people that are more, or not people, entities that are more highly developed than he. But he really isn't very clear about all of that.
Well, then ask him this other thing, that when he was on the planet Earth, did he attend college?
Oh yes, he attended college.
Ask him where he attended and what year did he graduate.
Graduated in 1928. All I can get is Polytechnic.
Ask him which Polytechnic.
Either he doesn't know or I'm not getting it clearly. All I know is it begins with an O. Odeon. It may just be Oregon. I don't know.
Oh, very
I'm
good.
not sure.
That's very good.
And there you have an interview with a John Osmer, who died in November 1946, apparently. We have not validated any of the information on this particular session, so if any of you would like to do so, go to Salem, Oregon, and find out about a John Osmer who died in November 1946. If you do, we would certainly like to hear what you find out. Also, we have much more of this information regarding this generating unit that John Osmer is so interested in, and perhaps you can find out something about that also. Continuing on, here's MAJ with her favorite friend in a non-physical way. Her friend's name is Hans, and she is with him at this moment.
But Hans has been with me a lot of the time. Like whenever I seem to be in a real spacey place, he takes my right hand in his left hand.
Can you communicate with him?
Yes.
Ask him then how he feels and what he thinks where he is now.
He really doesn't think about it very much. He experiences, and he is connected to my development.
Ask him if there is a difference in his perspective as to where he is now than when he was on the planet Earth physically.
Oh yes, he says there's an utter lack of trying where he is now.
Then what is important, ask him, that he feels about Earth life existence, physical matter existence here?
It's like a testing ground, a proving ground. With our bodies, we are able to work out our karma in a more effective way than in the other planes. He says as far as he can understand, and he says too, like so many of the other entities over there, that he has much to learn, but he is at a higher level of development than the gentleman we spoke to before. He lets me know that, but it's not with a sense of pride or anything. It's just a statement. He says that originally the Earth plane was put together as a kind of amusement, as just a toy, a game, that somehow got out of hand.
Who created the toy, the game?
The perfect energy, the pure energy, infinity. He says we call it by lots of names. The Creator. He says it wasn't an accident. It was a created plan, a concept.
Very good. Ask him if from his perspective he can perceive patterns that will take place in our time and space in the near future.
He says yes, and then he tells me right away, personally, that certain patterns have been hidden from me. Others have been given to me very clearly.
We'll have to interrupt here because this is the end of this side of the cassette, and we will resume with MAJ and Hans on the other side. So simply pick up your cassette, shut it off, turn it over, and we'll see you on the other side.
Ask him if our understanding of brain-mind from his viewpoint where he is now is anywhere near accurate.
Well, he says there are different approaches in the Earth plane to the concept of brain-mind. some more accurate than others, but that man has more than one mind. He has one brain, but he has more than one mind. There's a mind that's like the higher mind. And there's a human level mind that we usually think of as our analytic mind. That the brain itself is a storehouse, like a computer. That's interesting. He says that the human brain has within it a composite of experiences that extend beyond the lifetime of the individual. And it's the mind that interprets. The higher mind knows. The higher mind is wise, in touch with the wisdom, but the ordinary, the everyday human mind is the interpreter of the information that is stored in the brain. That sometime man may discover a way to tune into that storehouse of information, just like it has been discovered a way to tune into the stored memories of the lifetime, throughout the lifetime. He says it will be a natural evolutionary process that will go along with the development of a higher level of consciousness. That some of the attempts at jolting the mind, no, the brain, by forceful means have sometimes been harmful. Some of the heavy drug usage particularly sometimes create a lesion between the memory bank in the current short-term, even long-term human memory. And the lesion is something that, it's like a leakage, so that some of these things would leak through, but not in an organized, sensible fashion, creating apparent psychotic episodes. And not particularly useful. Of our methods of attempting to cure these psychotic episodes are more disastrous than helpful. but more gentle. That particularly in terms of drugs, he's talking about. With just a kind of gentle understanding, patience, the kind of reaching out to the person on an unconscious level. Some of these scars may be healed. And in the case of psychotic episodes, it's more useful to the individual to heal over these leakage spots than to try to pry them open further. Because if we allow the patterns, say in a more normal brain, if we allow the patterns to develop in their own way, there will be spontaneous states in which the stored memory will pour through. He says this work that we're doing now is one way of tapping into that information. The man is coming in to join us, and this man is dressed in like maybe what a hunter would have worn hundreds of years ago. He's got on kind of a leather suit. No, it's sort of a long vest, and it's on top of another shirt and pants. He's got on a hat. He has dark hair. I asked him who he was, and he said he was another guide on the same plane as Hans. His name is Minnerton. I guess that's the same one we were talking about. I don't remember if that's the same name.
Minnerton?
Mm-hmm. No, Yes, what he said, Minnerton.
Fine. Ask him if he has a specialty in the business of guiding, as it were.
He says he has an interest in the outdoors and things to do with the land and conservation. He doesn't know if that's a specialty or not. He kind of chuckles about that.
Well, that's a pretty good specialty, yes. Ask him if he understands the basic needs of growing of plants, for example. Does his interest go into that?
He says sometimes he can communicate with the plant spirits, and sometimes he can put humans in touch with the plant spirits.
How does he do that?
He has a way of getting the attention of the human. Sometimes he just kind of imperceptibly reaches out. So the human feels a pull toward the plant. He says that's why there are some people who seem to know exactly what to do in the growing of plants, trees, all kinds of foliage.
Does he know of any ways to help the plant grow any better?
Well, the plant needs fresh, clear air and sunshine and, of course, all the fertilizer and water. But it needs another quality, a kind of a recognition of its consciousness. And those people who take care of the plants are able to help the plant grow by recognizing its consciousness, being completely aware that this is a conscious being. And the plant responds to this and will just put out everything it has toward growth.
Is there a way that we can learn to do this?
He says it's not a matter of learning. It's just a matter of accepting that this is a fact and adjusting one's attitude accordingly. To simply be aware that each plant has the capacity to feel its environment and feel the emotions.
What attitude should we take then when we harvest plants for our own consumption?
A thankful attitude of giving the plant thanks for growing, because this consciousness of the plant does not intend to be continually living in the plant form, that it's very willing to be transformed into another form of consciousness by being used as food or any other industrial use that is necessary for survival. So we must have an attitude of thankfulness, like thanking the plant for growing to the state. He says it really does, the plant really has a choice. There's a choice factor of growing larger and more healthy.
If one consumes such a plant, does that consciousness then become a part of the person who consumes the plant?
Yes.
And then are there different degrees of consciousness?
Contributes to the life force.
I see.
And he says that's why people are more vibrant, more alive, who eat fresh and raw foods, because the consciousness is still alive in the plant and transfers to the person who consumes it, or the animal who consumes it.
How long does it stay within the plant after harvesting?
It says a maximum of 2 weeks. But the sooner after it's harvested that it's consumed, the better it is.
Does freezing affect the consciousness, disappearance from it?
He says it dims it, makes it less conscious, but if it's frozen very quickly, the benefit from the consciousness is still there, but not to the same extent as if it were consumed fresh. But it is better to freeze. In these terms, it is more useful to freeze than to cook.
I see. Then by inference, the best way that we would have plants for our consumption in wintertime, as it were, would be a greenhouse where we could have fresh plants.
Yes, it would. He says there are other benefits to the edible plants. Besides transmitting this life force through the consciousness, there are nourishing effects of the cooked plants and the stored plants also. But to get the maximum effect, one would eat fresh, raw, edible plants.
Ask him if he has ever existed here on or in planet Earth and is well aware of the plants that we have.
He says yes.
What was his favorite plant?
Rutabaga.
Rutabaga.
I couldn't hardly say that because I just can't imagine it, but he says he likes it. It has a lot of vitamins.
And after that, what does he like?
He likes beets and carrots and all the dark green plants. Spinach, broccoli. He's not as partial to those plants that have to be dried, but he knows that we must have them and they're useful. But he says you're asking his own personal preference. Yes, but he says they're very good, but particularly corn. He prefers corn to wheat. He says very nourishing, but it's not one of his favorites. Well, he's kind of laughing. He's kind of joking about this because he says it really, it doesn't make any difference what he used to like. But these are all very good sources of energy for us. He says that his own preference is to eat the fresh, raw vegetables, grains, fruits. And he's showing me fish and that you can also eat fish raw. And I'm kind of making a face, and he says, well, you don't have to. It has a lot of nourishment in it if you broil it or bake it. It's not so good for you fried, But I'm trying to get him to talk more about beef and lamb, pork. He says a human being would be healthier and more resistant if we did not eat animal flesh. That we have developed a certain dependency on animal flesh, and particularly in cold climates, it seems to be the body seems to require it. But according to him, we would do better if we ate the grain directly instead of feeding it to the animals and eating the animals. We would be more, well, he's showing me like people being kind of light and springy and buoyant, resilient, and also resistant to diseases. He approves of eggs. He seems to approve of fish. He seems to be kind of on the borderline about fowl. He says it depends on the circumstances. It's almost like I have the feeling he's trying to say to me, and it's not too clear, but it's like he's trying to say that there are periods of time when men eat different kinds of things, and it somehow has to do with it has to do with their habits and their patterns. And so maybe one would like wean oneself away from the fleshy animals and maybe then have fowl and then maybe not have that, but continue to have eggs and fish. I see lots of fish all around with the other food. He says wildfowl is more health producing. That's interesting. There's something about the domestically produced fowl that he feels is not too good for us. And I'm asking him, does it have anything to do with the hormones? And he said it has to do with a lot of the polluting factors. But that he feels more comfortable about like wild ducks or pheasants or wild turkeys. Well, he's talking over with Hans, and they're just kind of chatting back and forth. Hans says he's not really, he doesn't specialize in that, and in this other person, Minnerton, does. But that Hans feels it, really doesn't make a lot of difference. He has the feeling that, although he agrees with his friend that this would be probably the most healthy, he feels that a human can develop to a level where he's not adversely affected by any particular food. And they're kind of arguing. Minnerton is saying, why do we have to worry about adverse effects? Why don't we talk about what's positive and just eat the things that are going to bring a positive result, the most positive result. Hans is more inclined to just kind of let be. This other man is more more directive, like more protective of the people at that level. But they really don't basically disagree. I think Hans, yes, I'm sure, he's saying, well, that's right. He's saying that if it comes about naturally, so that the food patterns evolve naturally by man listening to his body and eating these appropriate, what the body really asks for, that then this is a most positive way to approach the matter of eating. Their disagreement seems to be in method rather than actually what is the best thing to eat. It's like Minnerton is more inclined to be kind of bossy, sort of autocratic, and Hans is more
More tolerant.
more tolerant, kind of allowing and letting the thing happen. Another thing they're both saying is that food grown in the same area where one lives is very much healthier for that human body. That the atmosphere contributes to the consciousness within the plant or animal, and the atmosphere blends more perfectly with the consciousness that has been surrounded by the same atmosphere.
Very, very interesting. But creates some problems.
I guess it would. So that's why Hans again says, well, he kind of shrugs his shoulders a little bit and he says, well, you're right, I agree, we both agree, but, from a practical standpoint, these humans have gotten themselves into so many funny situations that they have to go and buy everything from the supermarket that's been shipped all over the world before it gets there. He says he used to like to cook. He used to like to make bread, different kinds of bread. It's just showing it to me. I don't know what its name is, but it's kind of it's a brown loaf, and it's sort of heavy and flat. It didn't rise. It looks like it fell, but he says it's supposed to be that way. But it's heavy, and it wasn't meant to. It's a kind of you have to really bite it and chew it. I don't know what its name is. I wish he'd give me the recipe, but I don't think. He says sometimes what he says is sometimes if I'm okay, I'll see if this works. He's saying sometime when I'm baking bread and I'm looking through things that he might sort of nudge me and say, well, if you change this recipe this way.
Would he really do this? Would he really give you this unseen assistance?
Yes, I'm asking him that, and he says yes. Well, if he's not too busy doing something more important. Yeah. I will add a new dimension.
A new dimension indeed to the art of cooking, among other things. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this tape and the many meanings that are implied in it. See you next time.